Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. Welcome you out for a wonderful show that's for you and about you. Those of you that work so hard for your money, but you're now ready for your money to start working harder for you. You want that freedom, that cash flow, that prosperity today, not 30 or 40 gazillion years from now, but right now, right? So you can have all that freedom you want. And hey, it's not just about that, but just like my shirt says, why not have it all, right? It's all about having it all, not just blessing your own life, but being a rippler in the lives of others. So you have that ability to bless their lives too. And guys, I'm so proud to be a person that allows to have my ripple effect go through you. Thank you so much for allowing me to serve you. Thank you so much for listening and joining in and binging and sharing with other people. And you guys, it's just been awesome. I love watching the impact and influence of these numbers grow bigger and bigger. And thank you for those of you reaching out to me saying, hey, Chris, the new year, I think you are the guy to help me hit these goals. So I appreciate you guys reaching out. Again, if you always have questions, you can always shoot me an email, chris@moneyripples.com. If you have any questions about your situation, and heck, even if you got podcasts, you said, Chris, I would love to hear more about this, shoot me a message again and we'll check it out. So anyways, appreciate you guys. Make sure you check out our website, moneyripples.com, as well for more good information. So today, guys, I want to talk about something about how can we invest when you have very little to invest? Because every once in a while, I get people that will message me, like I mentioned before, and they'll say, "Okay, Chris, I don't have a lot, right?" And when I say a little to invest, I mean maybe you've got less than $10,000 or $20,000, right? You maybe don't have a ton. And I want to specifically talk to those of you that say, Chris, I'm kind of early in the path. I'm not ready for you yet to do this kind of stuff, but I'm trying to figure out how to get there, right? And maybe you are ready. I don't know, but in any case, like maybe you're just like, I'm not ready to do any big investments. I couldn't really do a real estate deal or anything like that. Maybe you could do like AHP, like we've talked advertised on the show, right? Where you could do a minimum of $100, and that's an option. But there's some first things I want you to consider before you try to do an investment like that. So first thing you want you to understand, because again, you all have your own individual situations, is what caused this in the first place? What has caused you to not have any money to invest in the first place? Now, there could be various reasons, right? One, you could be younger. You could be in your 20s, just starting out. You're just trying to get on your feet. Two, maybe you've focused all your money on paying off debt versus saving for investing or anything of that nature. Three, maybe you were like me, back to the recession where you had a lot of money and then it ate it all up. And you basically went from, like, in my case, I went from millionaire to upside down millionaire, where I was over $1 million in debt. And so you probably didn't have a lot of cash to work with as a result. Maybe you kind of had that reset button hit on you in the recent past. But there could be other things too. It might be this. This is why it's so important to understand what caused this, because if we don't address the cause of what created this in the first place, right? Well, then it's very likely this will happen again, or it will continue to happen, and you'll never have enough money to invest. So again, the first thing is what caused this. I mentioned this book before. I mentioned the book Richest Man in Babylon, right? A lot of the reason why people don't have money is because, one, they don't pay themselves first. So I'm going to ask you this: are you paying yourself first? Are you actually taking a little bit? Even if you're paycheck to paycheck, are you at least taking $5 a month or $5 a week or $20 or $50 or $100 and automatically doing it, like putting that money away? And I would suggest doing like what my wife had us do, rather than just trying to put it away as money comes in, which is good. You can do that. But even better is having something automated that makes it come out without you even thinking about it. Because the truth is because of Parkinson's law is kind of like the law of the vacuum, right? Whenever you have a rise of income or a reduction of expenses, or you have more time or anything else, you get more of something, you tend to use it all up and you're right back to where you were. If it's time, you free up some time because maybe you're not doing some activity anymore, but within a few months, you feel like you're just as busy as you were previously, right? Or maybe it's with money. Maybe you paid off a loan and you're like, cool, I've got an extra $100 a month or a few $100 a month. And then next thing you know, you're like, where'd that money go? It feels the same. That's what I mean. And so I just start doing this automatically, and it could just be, like I said, 5, 10, $20 a month minimum. If you're just starting out, do that. Start there. you'll start to realize you can afford it. Now, your goal is you eventually want to be saving at least 10% of your income to pay yourself. That is key. If you can do that. Now, you may not be there yet. And some of you might already be doing that and you're well beyond this step, and that's great, right? But for those of you that aren't here yet, that's the what you want to work up to, is start doing that first. Secondly, making sure that you are tracking your income and your expenses. Make sure you're using tools like Mint, or maybe you're using like a spreadsheet or something, or QuickBooks or whatever it might be, to ensure that you're tracking your money. Do that. Make sure those things are happening. And then third is, as you start to do that, then start to build up your savings. Now, personally, I like to do, I like to promote 10% donation to charity, right? I do 10% to my church or to other charities. I really do more than 10%, I guess, technically. I do that at least 10%. Then we do 10% to ourselves, pay for ourselves. And then, even if you can, another 10% or more anywhere else that can be invested or whatever. Now, granted, here's the thing. Now, when you're paying yourself this 10%, especially when it's early in the stages, most likely you're just trying to build up an emergency fund. You're just trying to get up to that 6 month of expenses. So if your expenses are $5,000 a month, we want at least $30,000 saved up. Listen, this money is sacred. The problem is, I get a lot of people have this, what I call a rubber band effect, where they get a little extra cash and they'll either spend it or they'll use it to pay on loans or whatever it might be. And especially if they pay off debt with it, the problem is that when they pay on loans, the next thing that happens is that they need that money again. And then now they're back into this situation. So sometimes they might say, cool, I paid off that low interest car loan. Oh, shoot, I don't have any cash. All right, charge up the high interest credit card now, right? It doesn't make sense. So I really recommend people to, start to build up that cash reserves, that emergency reserves. Now, this is the test. You might be like, Chris, I hear all these cool investment ideas. I want to invest now, right now. Patience, grasshopper. Okay. This is the thing, is that you do not want to do that right now. The fastest way to getting to the point where you can invest is by doing in this specific order. Make sure that, one, you are building up that emergency reserves. You're building that and you're starting to save. You might be starting with $5 or $20 a month. Perfect. Do that. Maybe you're doing several $1,000s a month. Do that too, but build that up. Now, the cool thing is, like with strategies I teach you guys, like with infinite banking, using life insurance and things like that. If you're worried about money sitting there doing nothing, what I do is it's the same thing I promote a lot of my clients doing is, hey, if you're building up that 6 month reserve or whatever, 2/3 of that reserve could be stored inside your life insurance that you can just access later. That's tax-free money growing. It's growing tax-free and much better return than sitting in your bank anyways. Now, you might start off with the bank, but eventually you might say, all right, this is starting to build up a little bit. Let's move some of this money into like the life insurance, get a much better return. Like my wife, for example, she wants at minimum 120,000 sitting in cash that we do not touch. It's for only emergencies. It's for that peace of mind and that security for her. Well, of course, I don't want 120,000 sitting in a bank account earning 0.1%, right? As much as I'd love to make $120 a year off 120 grand, that's not what I think is sexy. But if I can say, well, I can move some of that into online savings, maybe earn more, like at 1.75%. And if you're on my email list, if you've downloaded my ebook on moneyripples.com, you probably get some of my emails where I have cool links to getting some of these things set up. And so if you haven't done that, I recommend that now. But yeah, so I'll put some of that money. So I'll keep some in the local bank that we can access, some in online savings so it can earn, maybe 1.75% or something like that. Currently, I know the rates are kind of going down, so it might be at 1 or 1.5% again soon. Who knows? But that's where it is currently with the account I'm using. And then the rest I keep in my life insurance that, makes me, easily net 4 to 5% a year on that cash that's in there. And that's tax free. So that's even better than my 1.75% savings account that's I have to pay tax on, right? So that's kind of what we do to split that up. So that's one thing you can do, that it's not investing, but it is saving, and it's saving with intention, and it's saving with power, because now you're getting some leverage. Then as you do that, now we start looking at, where do we invest it? And once you get those reserves in place, then we start looking at places to create some money. Now we might be doing this too. Now some people will say, all right, Chris, I'm not ready for investing, but I do have loans that I want to pay off, but I also need savings. What do I do? Do I put all the savings right now? Do I use it to, do I split it? The answer is any of the above. It could be any of the above. The determination is if you have zero savings right now, that is your main priority. Like bar none, do not make extra payments on your loans right now. Just get that money in savings, build that up, get the habit going, especially if you haven't done it. Now, if you have got a decent amount of savings going, cool. Maybe we could flip back. Maybe you still put some towards savings. You still have the habit of doing something there, even if it's a smaller amount. And then the majority you can have going towards paying off certain loans. Again, I'd have you reference back to episode number, I believe it was 335. Yeah, 335, best way to pay off your debt. Use that formula that I used, that cash flow index that I created about 12 years ago. Use that one to help you figure out what might be the best route to go on, which loans pay off or which ones not to pay off or put any extra towards. So again, it's always case by case. Some of my favorite clients, by the way, are actually the ones that are maybe they don't have a lot of money to invest or very little, but they've got some assets, maybe equity trapped in their home, and they've got a lot of loans and debts. If you've got a lot of loans and debts and it's kind of complex, you might want to reach out to me and see what we could do there, because that might be some of the best returning investments you can have that will get you to the point where you can then start to save and invest even. So that's what I'd say right there. Start there. Address that first. Save the money, protect it, grow it, and then as you start to do it, now we can start worrying about where do we go and invest to start generating some passive income. But again, everything has to be in place. The foundation has to be set. You have to build the foundation of the house first. You can't just throw up a wall or roof and expect it to stand up because it will just topple over. You've got to have the foundation in place. But once that's in place or getting into place, now we can start having some fun, right? Now we can start doing some cool things with investing. So anyways, guys, like that's my advice for you guys right now. And like I said, there are options out there to invest that are better. And there's ways to make money that maybe require no money at all. We've talked about different aspects on the show, things like where you can leverage credit cards, things like that. Like you have paid off credit cards. Could you leverage that by helping other people improve their credit? There's lots of things you can do. There could be things if you have a business or side business, because you generate more income there. So many times I get clients where the best investment they have, they actually don't, it's not outside of what they're already doing. It's actually stuff they're already doing, but just doing it better or more intentionally. So that's the exciting stuff is when I see like clients making like 50,000 a month because they invested back in their business after about a year or so, when they were making maybe 10,000 before. Hey guys, there's no investment that you could put very little to no money into to have it keep growing like that without a lot of time and energy and focus, right? So anyways, that's the kind of thing I think is just awesome. So just know there are so many different ways to build your foundation, so many different ways. And even though, hey, we want things to move quickly, it's got to be done in the right order. When you do it in wisdom and order, if you're a wise steward of the resources you have, it'll be like magic. It seems like more resources show up. When you start to do the right things and you do it in the right order, watch what will happen. When you start to save money away and put it away, which is really a acknowledgement of faith in abundance and principles, right? When you start to do that, you'll notice that money will start to come in more easily. You'll start to catch little visions of opportunities that pop up. And then things get exciting, things get awesome, and they can go very, very quickly. Guys, I'm living proof of this. And I know I was never perfect at it, and you don't have to be either. But the question is, will you do it? Just start by doing this now. Little baby steps towards the right direction, and you'll see that trajectory will get you much, much farther faster. So guys, I hope you make it a wonderful and prosperous day, and we'll see you later. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. Yes, that's right. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm an anti-financial advisor. Hey, I'm welcoming you out to this show today. It's because this show is for you and about you. Those of you that work so hard for your money and you're sick and tired of it and you're ready for your money to start working harder for you right now. You want that freedom, that cash flow, that prosperity today, not 30 or 40 years from now if the market just happens to smile on you the right way, but right now. So you can have that freedom to be with those that you love, to do what you love right away. And you work because you want to, not because you have to, right? You do everything by choice because you have that freedom. And on top of that, you're not just here for your own comfort and convenience, but you know that as you become more free, you become more liberated financially, you can bless the lives of more and more people around you. You can create a ripple effect. And that is what we do here as Ripplers today. And I appreciate allowing me to create a ripple effect through you by allowing me to teach you guys, because this is what fires me up. This is what makes me love life. And you guys are such a big part of it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this with others as well, especially if you're like, I don't know if I can always teach this stuff, but I know I can at least get them to listen to the show, and that's easier, right? So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys that are binging on it and trying to listen to all these 300 plus episodes. So you guys are awesome. Hey, as a reminder, you can always check out our website, www.moneyripples.com. You can see blogs on there. You can get the ebook, Beyond Rice and Beans. There's all kinds of stuff there today. So go check it out. So today I've been saving this episode for a while. I think I've probably had this on my list for about 6 months. And I was going to do it earlier. And then I thought, you know what? I'll wait till we get into January. I'll wait till we get to the new year. And then I think I'll produce it then. Because I'll tell you, with all the experience that I've had over the years, both with myself, or as someone who's been able to, not just, create money, right, but be able to, become financially independent twice, right? Once in 2006, and then with the recession, became an upside down millionaire. I went over $1 million in debt with all the recession and crap that I went through then, but then was able to dig back out of that and was able to do it again 3 years ago, back in 2016. And, and that was awesome. But I'll tell you, over the years, one thing I've noticed that's an accelerant that can actually help you hit your financial goals faster, it's not a strategy. It has nothing to do with what kind of investment you're doing. Now, granted, investments can help, right? Especially when you got the right ones. But the one thing that's interesting, as I've worked with in my own life, my own experience, plus hundreds and hundreds of clients that I've worked with, the one thing I've noticed that will speed up yourself up to getting to your goal is, one, actually having one, but two, is knowing what's next. And what I find is that I believe a lot of people are sabotaging their freedom unknowingly. Unconsciously, you're sabotaging your own freedom. Now, you may not think you are, but if you don't have a really clear picture, or at least a good idea of what you want to do next after you hit financial freedom, it won't matter. And it reminded me of the question I was asked back in 2006. They said, Chris, if money were no issue in your life, what would you do with your time? And I remember I gave this, the stereotypical response of travel more, spend time with family, the kind of thing that everybody tells me, right? But they said, yeah, but that's great, Chris. What about the other 40 weeks out of the year? What are you going to do then? And I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. Like, I'd never considered, and I was 28 at the time. I'd never considered, what would I do if I didn't have to work anymore? We talk about getting to a place where you work because you want to, not because you have to. And I'll tell you, the one thing that slows people down subconsciously is that because they don't know what they would do, it's almost a scary thing. They almost sabotage their own results. And again, it's not consciously usually. It's usually something that just happens subconsciously in your mind, is that you somehow will trip yourself up. You'll keep yourself in the rat race longer. And that shouldn't be the case, guys. There is no reason to stay in the rat race longer. It's better to keep working your job than it is to just, try to destroy your money, right? And I'm not saying you guys would do that. All of you would do that, but some of you would. And so, when I got to that place, because I did get to a place where I'm like, wait a minute, there's enough income streams coming in. I'm only working a few hours a week. I can take care of my family off this. This is awesome. And it never occurred to me, because my mindset went from the growth mindset, right? Of, you got to grow those mutual funds slowly over time as it's going like this, up and down, through the market waves and everything else. But then I realized, shoot, like, now I'm actually there because I was all about an income focused, passive income and residual income and things like that. Then it was like, well, now what? And because I didn't know that answer, like, I gave him an answer. I said to him, all right, well, maybe I would teach ballroom dancing, right? That's what I would do in retirement. But the truth is, I'm like, well, all right, well, what next? And so I kept working, which was good. I mean, I think it was really good that I didn't just get comfortable. I did keep working. But the cool thing is that now all the money I was making, working, like, I was doing stock coaching at the time, right? That was my active income I was doing at that time. I was like, okay, that's an extra $6,000 a month that I'm just throwing into savings or whatever I want to put it into. And so that's what I did. And that was awesome. That was so cool. It was so cool to have low expenses, great, residual income, but also the active income that went with it too. By the way, my expenses were only like 3,500 a month or so at that time. So it wasn't hard. Even after I bought the Mercedes, it was still like 4,500 a month. So it was really easy to survive just fine. I was loving it. But I'll tell you, like, I didn't know what was next. And I remember I was searching, right? Like I remember that fall, it was the summer of 2006 that I realized I'm out of the rat race. And then in the fall, I was like, well, what's next? And so I was starting to kind of teach people on the side about money stuff, right? But again, I vowed never to be a financial advisor. So that was kind of off the table in my mind a little bit. And I was looking at dance studios or places I could buy that could turn into a dance studio. So I had this dream. I'm like, what do I do this here? And I looked at a movie theater, an old movie theater, or even like a play theater. I was going to convert that, but that was way too much work. So I bailed out of that one because it was run down. I looked at another building, and I was actually about to sign, and then something told me don't do it. And one thing I've learned is that if you hear those strong impressions of to do or do not do something, follow it. Follow your gut, right? Follow that whisper, that still small voice. And so I did, and I didn't. I didn't sign at that time. I was still lost. Eventually, though, it got to the point where I was going to start teaching. I partnered up with a guy named Garrett Gunderson and a few other people, and we created this company called Freedom Fast Track. That now that company's called Wealth Factory. We created the company together, and that was kind of like my next. Like that was the thing I really felt called to do at that moment. And that's an interesting thing is that, I had a passion for ballroom dancing. I still did some teaching and things like that, did some dinner dance events. I actually had a company called Les Majestiques that was basically a catered dinner and dance business. But eventually, the passion, as I started to hone in on that, was really around teaching and helping people out because I knew there's plenty of dance instructors out there, but there weren't many people teaching the things that I was teaching. And so I stuck with that. And and I'll tell you, like when I knew what I wanted to do after retirement, I remember when I was asked that question: if money were no issue, what would you spend your time doing? That was April of '06. It was by June I realized I could probably retire. I could just work these few hours a week with these streams of income, and I'd be good. And that was cool. I really truly believe I got there faster because I became clear. I wasn't just given the same old, well, I spend more time with family and travel. When I got really clear, and especially when there's a mission behind it, something bigger, again, about creating that ripple effect, right? Something that could actually bless people's lives. That is when it got cool. Now, you guys could be totally different. It might be like when we're looking at investments, right? Maybe you're looking to create passive income. I'll tell a lot of my clients to say, hey, yeah, there's lots of investments that can get you there. But the thing we really want to know is what kind of investments would you love regardless of the money? Now, granted, you want to make money with it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But what's something that you actually would enjoy doing that if you said, cool, I don't have to work anymore, but you had these investments, you would still enjoy them, versus feeling like you bought yourself another job, right? Where you're like, oh, I can't even stand these investments, or this investment worries me. I have stress, I have scarcity and fear that I might lose money. That is the worst investment you could be doing, right? You want to be in a place where it feels good. It's something that you actually enjoy, have something your interest in, because when you're interested in it, you'll get better at it. And when you get better at it, you'll keep increasing your wealth in doing those things. So really look for those areas. But for some of you, it may have nothing to do with money. It might just be you want to go and coach a baseball team. I had a client where that was his next, and in fact, it became his current next. He even did it before he reached financial freedom. I remember he came to me because him and his wife were saying, "Hey, how can we make money doing what we love?" Right? And his thing was he loved coaching teenage boys in baseball, right? And he would do City League every summer. It fired him up. He was so happy about life. And likely he had a job that allowed him to take some time off and do stuff like that. They were very accommodating for his schedule. Well, we kept talking about over and over, like, how do we get him out of his job and do this full time? How do we make money at this? Because he wasn't getting paid doing City League. We talked about maybe doing, coaching a sports team, like high school or something like that. But then it got to a point, I just told him, I said, hey guys, um, and I asked his wife, I said, how is your husband? Like, how is Bob? I was telling this wife, Holly, I was like, how is Bob when it's during baseball season? She's like, oh, he's a dream to live with. He's so much happier. He just loves his life. He's just, on cloud nine. And I said, yeah, okay, like we could try to figure out how to quit this job, but what's kind of cool is that this job actually funds his dream. And in fact, it even allows him the flexibility and time to live his dream. So instead of just trying to focus on quitting this job, what if we look at this job as a blessing? What if we look at this job as something that actually allows him to be free to do what he loves and not even worry about the money, just because it gives him to love his life? And they're like, that's a good idea. And they did. And you know what's cool? A few years later, the high school actually brought him on and hired him part-time as a coach. So eventually he did start making money at it, and he had a job that again was flexible and was able to do that. And that's the point, guys, that you really got to think about this. Is you can't just focus on just getting to that goal of getting, hitting that cash flow goal of financial independence, whether it's 10,000 a month, 20,000 a month, or whatever it might be. Or like I had a guy just this last week, it was 6,000 a month. That was it. I was like, cool. Like, that's awesome. I love it when somebody's like needs only 3,000 a month or 6,000 a month. Like, oh, that's a dream come true for me, because it's so much easier to hit. I mean, now sometimes 10 or 20,000 can hit too, depending on how much money somebody has sitting around or it's in assets. But it's always fun when you can hit those, easier goals, right? But whatever that number is for you, so many people took all this focus to get there. That's what I did. I was putting all this focus on how can I retire by the time I'm 40. And then when it happened, I was 28, I was able to retire. And I thought, well, wait, I'm there now. Now what? What am I going to be when I grow up? And this is the kind of thing I want you guys to consider is what would your life look like? What would just absolutely fire you up where you have purpose each day? It might be money related. It may have nothing to do with money. It might be just changing to a different job. I joke with people all the time that, I might want to, if I were to do something different than what I'm doing now, besides dancing or something like that, I might want to be a server at a restaurant, a nice restaurant, of course, not like Chick-fil-A, or McDonald's, not like that. Right. But like a server at a nice restaurant, just because I think it's just kind of fun to help people out, and I would only do that part-time because, I wouldn't want to do that kind of job full time. That would be tough. That would be really tough for sure. But that's the kind of thing. Like, it's like, what is that next thing for you? Because if you get defined on what that next step is, I'll tell you, your goals, you'll start to notice that you'll start going faster towards your financial goals. Because you know what? You can have your Google Maps, your GPS out, but if you don't have a starting point, you don't know where you are, or two, you don't have a destination, you're just going to drive around aimlessly. You might guess, you might point in a relative direction, but you're going to meander there. What's awesome is when you have a very clear destination of where you're going, it's easy to say, here's the fastest route to get there. Here's how you do it. It's just like if you're in a room, you flip on the lights, you walk a lot faster through that room than if you do if it's pitch black, right? If it's pitch black, you're wondering if you're going to stub your toe. You're not sure if you're going the right direction. You're not even sure where you're going. When the lights are on, you can see it, the destination's there, and you go for it. And so, guys, that's what I'm challenging you to do. I'll tell you, for me, you know, I, I'm here to live a full-time mission, even though it might be like a part-time, work life that I have here where I part-time consult and I part-time help with the life insurance and infinite banking stuff, but ultimately, like, this is like my full-time mission. This is the thing that fires me up. You guys, you are the reason why I love waking up each day. Like, I love to teach. I love to be able to share what I've learned and be able to give it to you guys. And I appreciate you so much for allowing me that platform to do that. Now, granted, I'll be doing the platform anyways, even if there's none of you here. I know there's lots of you listening to this show and watching this show. But that's the thing is that, for me, like, it's about what kind of life do you have that has a life of purpose and meaning, and what kind of legacy can you leave behind? And hey, it's not just here with you guys. Like, I got a family back there. Like, I've got, people that are part of that mission too. There's a legacy I have continuing through them with, between my wife and I, our two blended families, we got 8 kids, right? Like, that's a big part. By the way, that's where the rest of my hours go. If you want to know, like, how I'm working, full-time or overtime, part-time here, full-time to overtime over there. So anyways, guys, appreciate you so much for joining us today. I want you to have a life of purpose, a life of meaning, a life of passion. You may not know the answer right away, but really think on this, because once you get clear on what that next step is beyond financial independence and financial freedom, that is when you'll actually achieve financial independence and freedom faster. Make it a wonderful and prosperous day. We'll see you later.